Good afternoon. As protests over migrant hotels grow, the Home Secretary has promised a new fast-track asylum appeals process to be introduced. The overhaul comes against a backdrop of frustration and protests over where asylum seekers are housed. It follows a decision by the High Court to grant Epping Forest District Council a temporary injunction to block asylum seekers from being housed in the Bell Hotel in Essex. Well, here's more from our political correspondent, Amanda Agas.
Yes, so the government is clearly under real pressure over this issue because of those scenes of protests we've seen up and down the country, because councils are saying they want to follow the example of Epping and appeal against the use of hotels in their areas to house asylum seekers. So they've made an announcement today that they're going to introduce a new system to fast-track appeals by asylum seekers who've had their initial applications rejected. And the idea is to reduce the amount of time that they are spending living in taxpayer-funded accommodation. Now, currently, the system is that the appeals are heard by a judge sitting in a tribunal, but there are really long backlogs. So there are 51,000 people waiting to have their claims heard under the current system, with the average waiting time more than a year. The government say they want to cut that to 24 weeks. They're going to set up a new service which won't be staffed by judges but by professionally trained adjudicators, as they're calling them, whose only job will be to look at these asylum cases and get through them as quickly as possible. The idea being that then once someone's claim is rejected, they can be sent back or deported elsewhere, although of course that relies on having a returns agreement with those other countries. And really the backdrop to all of this is that the number of asylum claims currently being made is at record levels. We've seen that surge in small boats. The government say they have been making progress in getting through them, the initial claims, more quickly, but that the appeal system itself is broken. Let me read you what Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, says about it. She says, "We cannot carry on with these completely unacceptable delays in appeals as a result of the system we've inherited, which means that failed asylum seekers stay in the system for years on end at huge cost to the taxpayer. Overhauling the appeals system so that it is swift, fair and independent with high standards in place is a central part of our plan for change." Now, we've spoken to some immigration lawyers who've welcomed this. They say it's a start. The government has to do something to get a grip on this. It's very unclear exactly how quickly they're going to be able to bring it in. They're going to have new legislation to get this to work. Clearly, it's going to be complicated and expensive to train all these new adjudicators, and costly as well, of course. The Tories and Reform, they effectively say the whole system is in chaos. The Conservatives say we should be leaving the European Convention on Human Rights for these kind of cases and deporting many more people. We shouldn't have scrapped the Rwanda scheme that they were trying to set up, which would have worked better, they claim, at deterring people from coming across the Channel in the first place. Of course, Labour reject that. They say it was a gimmick. They've got their own measures in place to deal with France, additional measures to tackle the gangs to try and reduce those numbers. But currently, they're at record levels, and the number of people being housed in these hotels, Labour promised to stop that before the election. Well, they've actually gone up by 8%. They're also under real pressure from Reform, with Nigel Farage saying yesterday, effectively, get rid of the entire asylum seeker, this entire asylum system, arrest everyone who comes here illegally, detain them and then deport them back home, even if they're somewhere where they might become a victim of torture and persecution. So a lot of questions around this, government under real pressure to show that they're taking action. It's unclear whether something a little bit technocratic like this will really assuage those concerns.